it's Supermoon Tarot, and in today's video we are looking at which is your best timeline. Now I want to be very clear about what this means and our intentions going forward, so you can not only have the best possible experience, but you can literally change your fate. So when it comes to how things work, so to speak, when it comes to the decision making, what we manifest, how things play out, whatever, there is kind of a hodgepodge of things going on. Some of those things are based on decisions you pre-made in your karmic contract or your soul contract. It's the same thing I'm referring to. And keep in mind, even those things are not really set in stone. Like they're things you're hoping to achieve or you would like to experience, but you are more than willing, or you're more than able to and allowed to change it in your contract, as in like you go to the spirit realm directly and you change it. Sometimes you're just changing it in the physical reality by just deciding certain things. And sometimes when things are going to happen, there's a lot of options. So it's like, this is popping up, but you could choose one of 8 things, and then that opens new routes up. Sometimes it's very rarely, but once in a blue moon, some stuff is very destiny bound, but most of it is very open. So we have some things that are guided and picked in advance, but there's still lots of options around it, and other times things are just waiting to play out based on your decisions and intentions and where you'd like to go and so on and so forth. So when we think of it that way and we look at everything, this is when timelines come into effect. Now, there are timelines on smaller scales as in individual experiences. There's timelines for everything. There's a lot of things going on at once. Keep in mind, time doesn't even work in a linear sense. We just perceive it as such, but once you break free of that mentality, you can do a lot of cool stuff. I do highly recommend checking out on my Patreon. I've helped people have fun, and we've done some time traveling. We have worked into looking at what that exactly means and diving deeper into that concept and explanation. So if you're interested in that, it's available. But the point being is, we're talking about you and your individual timelines. So that means you at any point could hop consciousness, and you could be in wherever you want it to be. And if you're ever like, I don't love this isn't great, here's the really cool thing. You are meant to question things. You are meant to want better, wish for better. Let's say before you came to this lifetime, you thought this would be great to teach me this concept, and you're like, whoa. No, I don't like that. That's great. You're totally welcome to say, I would like to receive it in a different way. I'd like to just straight up talk about it, so on and so forth. So what's going on is I'm going to show you 3 of the, right now, closest to you, best potential timelines, or where we're picking from, timeline type of situations. We're going to look at all 3 of them individually, and then from there, we're going to just pick the one that's best for you. Now, I also want to clarify some other details with this, because it not only helps us better understand what we're doing, but it helps us better understand how the system works by the simplicity of some prerequisites that my spirit guide was working with me with. So a particular spirit guide I work with when I do tarot, you often hear me consult them. They were like, okay, you're going to pick 3 cards for each, and 1 individual card is going to represent each timeline. And I said, are you sure I shouldn't pick out more information? And they said, no. I don't know if you could hear that. Sometimes they move stuff to basically add to that, and that was them. My spirit guide's going like, yes, correct. So in that regard, and that importance, as we had that flare pointed out, we are looking at these 3 possible timelines that are closest to us, but we want them simplified because my spirit guide said 3 main things are happening. 1, we don't want it too detailed and played out of what will happen next, because 1, at any given moment, you can then hop on the next best timeline. We're just trying to follow the closest immediate plan. We're simplifying it. We're not overthinking it. We're just picking what feels good now, and then you can continue to tailor that experience in that particular timeline or hop to the next best timeline. We're just simplifying the process. But also what we're doing is, because then I asked, Okay, well, I wanted to pull more cards to help them understand how to get on that timeline. Shouldn't I do that? My spirit guide said, no. Because what they need to understand, I'm delivering the message of what they were telling me to you. They said what they need to understand is they just need to decide it. So that's how great this is. We are both learning something today, actively together, choosing and making a better situation for you. But this is information I want you to remember and wield to your benefit going forward into the future. So we're looking at 3 possibilities. We're discussing what that would mean, how that feels to you. And when you go, ooh, that sounds nice, all you have to do is say, I want that to happen. And because here's the crazy thing, all you have to do is be somewhat aware of the process of things with it when it comes to the universe, whether it be manifesting, timelines, whatever. And once you decide to be aware of it, fathom it, and then be a participant in it, it goes from feeling like everything is just happening at you, and then you are working with it, which is very, very, very cool. So now that we understand all of that, we can move forward. I do want to say that if you would be so kind, could you please like and hit subscribe on this video and hit the notification bell? And as well, please let me know what you guys think in the comments. I always want to hear. I'm excited to hear what you guys think about timelines and your best possible timeline. What worked for you? Why did you choose it? Don't underestimate what your comments will benefit for other people and help them reevaluate even their own decision making, which is really cool. Like, we're all helping each other even when we're just sharing, which is awesome. But also, if you are interested in tipping, donating, or supporting me, I have those links down below, as well as you can do it through Patreon. And the reason why I highly recommend doing it through Patreon is not only is it just a kind gesture I'm very appreciative of, but you get a ton of exclusive content over there. I'm pretty sure I've passed over 200 videos. A ton of it is, if you like this type of stuff, it's just a ton of deeper dives in it, explanations, lots of information from the Akashic Records, spirit guides, my own personal experiences I've experienced from other people. I just posted 2 new videos over there. One is about does what we watch and surround ourselves with affect our reality and essentially what we manifest. Very interesting topic. I dive deep into that. And the second video is really, really, really special. It is the first time I not only got to be fortunate enough to channel an angel, but they are a very, very, very specific and special type. And they had some beautiful things to say, and if you were interested on that, and some deeper information on angels that I very rarely am allowed to talk about, but I was allowed, I got permission from them, and you can just learn more about that if you're interested. If you were also interested, I have courses that all down below. One is an intuition training course where you get to go into the spirit realm and visit your spirit guides. And the cool thing is, if you like this type of stuff, imagine being able to do it all the time. Because here's the cool part about the course. Not only does it go into that information with going to the spirit realm, meeting your spirit guides, but it talks about how the non-physical and the physical overlap more than we realize. We're doing it even right now, which is very cool. The second course is a tarot training course where I give away all of my secrets and the ways and methods I go about getting confirmation and working with tarot. But here's the cool thing. You can get right into reading it with simplifying the process but not losing any of the details. And 3, I have a new meditation training course because the way I was able to get into all of this stuff was that foundation. Meditation is a thinking person's practice. It is not going to be like any other type of meditation you've experienced before, and you will soon understand that very abstract ways of approaching things stretches your mind, helps you problem solve, helps you be more creative, helps you see beyond limitations, and when you have that, you can do anything. So those are available, as I said before, in the description below, but let's look at our groups. Now keep in mind, we're not picking on based on crystals today. These are just pretty. These are just our friends hanging out here. We have group number 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I want you to take a moment to maybe even reach out to your spirit guides or your highest self and say, please show me my timelines. Give yourself a second and then pick the group that you resonate with most. And I'm going to give you a moment to do that. Now that you have, you can go down to the description below where you can enjoy picking your timelines, and I'll see you there. But let's get started with group number one. Group number one, let's look into which is your best timeline by looking at the cards. In your first timeline, we have the Hermit in reverse. In your second, we have the King of Pentacles upright. And in your third, we have the Five of Cups in reverse. If you wouldn't mind just giving me one moment, I want to consult my spirit guide for additional details in these timelines, and I'll be with you in one moment. Okay, so I'm glad I did some additional asking, because what we're going to do is we're going to go over each one individually, but then we're also going to look at them as a whole. And I also asked some additional information because there seemed like there was a couple good options going on in here. And that way, of course, at the end, it's your decision what you feel is the best one you decide to go into. But you know me, I'm the queen of questions. I always ask many different factors so that when you make that decision, you can feel the utmost confident in comparison of the others and such. So first we've got the Hermit in reverse. Now, this is definitely coming into a timeline where you're wielding a lot of information and knowledge. And when I say that, it's like you're the person people go to for your insight. This would be somebody who's very knowledgeable in something, and don't underestimate if that knowledge maybe is not what you think it would be. Like, let's say you are, I don't know, very educated in like cosplay or something like that, right? You're the person everybody would go to for that information, and you're like, oh yeah, like I know this, I've seen this, I know this other individual who's good at it, and so on and so forth. So don't underestimate if it's not super obvious, like you have some sort of degree in it, or also don't underestimate if as time has been going on, let's say maybe you have a different type of career and job, but for funsies in your own free time, you've been casually looking up sort of a more niche route within that field you're looking into, and you haven't even been fully aware of how much knowledge you've been collecting. But this is definitely a timeline where there is a natural opening up of new friendships, new job opportunities. I was double checking with my spirit guide. They said that it would also open up financial and investment opportunities going on. So there's this feeling of adventure behind it, because it's sometimes when you go from suddenly not really hanging out with anyone, maybe you're more by yourself at this timeline, and this definitely refers to that, and I'll talk about that in one second, but suddenly you are in a position where you've got plans for the weekend in a way you didn't before, or you're checking out social opportunities you wouldn't before because you really would have wanted to do that in a group. You didn't have a group and now you do. Or you meet people who have certain tastes you've never thought of exploring and now you're doing that. Or maybe these certain financial opportunities involve going to new places or exploring just a different type of interaction socially you're not used to, like going to a new type of restaurant or whatever may have you in order to close the deal or have a certain type of experience. Maybe you have fun and do a giveaway and you make something and you work with someone in order to make the thing to give away. Do you see what I'm saying here? So there's this suddenly feeling of exploring a new side of yourself and the world you hadn't even considered was an option before, which is really cool and fun. It definitely, and this is what's really interesting, your time period alone before this did an interesting situation and something to consider in the future. As in, not only were you sort of prepping for this time period, sometimes when people are alone and vibing, they don't realize that it's leading to something else. Sometimes when we feel we are off to the sideline of things, not that I'm saying that's exactly how you felt, but some people feel like when things aren't happening the way they thought it could, or a new adventure isn't happening to them, it feels like a sideline type of thing, or like a bad timing thing. And little do they know, a lot of the times when I'm reading tarot for people, it's a prepping time period. And your prepping is not only information at the time period when you were more keeping to yourself and just vibing and you're living your day-to-day life, but in this timeline, you were prepping as almost, think of it as the opposite. So when you were alone, you were pulling back, and then suddenly now you're social, you've created what is literally a vacuum. That's very much what it feels like, because not only are you wielding this information and people find it useful, but it's almost like you're sucking all of this into yourself. Like you're pulling these people to you, you're magnetic to having these financial opportunities come to you, which is all really fun and cool. But there is something to consider here when I was asking more questions, because the thing is with this situation and scenario is there is the possibility, my spirit guide said it's not like definitive, it's, you know, it's up in the air of what you choose to do and how you choose to handle it, but there is the possibility that over time, what initially feels fun and exciting and you feel useful and you found your purpose kind of thing, maybe you don't, it's not your ultimate purpose, but it feels like that in that moment when you're exploring all this, is that you become dependent on it. You feel like, why would anyone want to hang out with me unless I have something I can offer them? And you can kind of, there's the potential to like get in your head about this, and suddenly you feel like sometimes you need to dip out of social experiences because all of this is in the background of your mind. You're building like a belief system around this, and you can easily avoid that and not have that, and understand that people will of course want to be around you even if you don't have something to offer them. They do just want to hang out with you. Think of the something to offer as it was the gateway to getting to know each other, and then you can just be friends or enjoy the experience at hand. But there is that potential it could happen. So it's good to know this, because that might dissuade you from picking this timeline, or if you choose to pick this timeline, you can be like, okay, I'll be aware of that and be sort of like, oh my God, do you hear how loud that is? So loud. Anyways, we're going past that. So this is just something to keep in mind when it comes to any of these timelines. You can either avoid it for that reason or go down that route and be like, oh, okay, I'll just keep that in mind and be aware of it in order to enjoy the most out of the timeline going forward. And remember, this is just the beginning of a timeline. At any point, you can change it and go somewhere else. We're just looking at the most immediate. Then over here in this timeline in the King of Pentacles, we also actually have a situation where you're doing very financially well. But this timeline, I can already tell you, might not be your best option. I mean, again, it's whatever you personally want, but this is somebody who's making a lot of money because of their proactive involvement. This is not passive. You're not creating a bunch of passive income scenarios where it's just coming your way. This is like you being highly aware of every decision being made. You can't really take time off because you're head boss of all these different projects and everyone turns to you. And if there is any type of slacking off, you see the kind of repercussions of that even though you don't have to take it all that seriously, you'll feel like it does. And again, who knows, maybe you do like this, you like being in control and power, and which, I mean, like, totally understandable, and maybe you can find a way to manage this, but there is a heightened level of getting in your head about the whole thing, like going from feeling so excited that you don't have to answer to anyone to just feeling overwhelmed and even defining your worth by it, and feeling like things that you might have not overthought as heavily or be able to think in a different way, it's like harder to let go of. Because over here we talk about overthinking it as well, but there is much more room to breathe, take a moment to reevaluate the belief system you could potentially build and realize people like you for who you are and get into this, compared to if you take a day off, suddenly someone, that restocking wasn't done in time, or a project you needed to get done to affect another one isn't done in time, and soon you're beating yourself up because you felt like, oh, I should have been more on top of that. You know what I mean? It's that very much vibe. So again, it doesn't mean in the future you can't be in charge of a bunch of things, but in this particular closed scenario, it leads from excitement and money to quick, short-lived, and feeling a lot of stress and kind of getting into your head about all of it and not feeling the most comfortable. And then in this timeline, this one's interesting. In the Five of Cups in reverse, it talks explicitly about the idea of karma being released. Now, I know that might be overrated for some of you, but I do want you to keep something in mind as we explore this. And I did ask additional questions with this. When we have that released, first of all, we all have it. It's just a natural thing that we've lived a lot of different lifetimes. And it's really interesting because you can have this pop up in your day-to-day life whenever, in ways you didn't even anticipate. I mean, I've heard of people literally getting rid of their allergies based on the fact that it was affected by past life. Keep in mind, that doesn't mean I'm implying don't go seek, like actual treatment and stuff like that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, I've seen amazing things happen. For example, this is like an example for myself. One time I was going through a short time period where I was suddenly just overcome with overwhelming like sleepiness. And I was like really surprised why this was happening. And I looked into it. In the past life that needed to be crossed over was one where I unfortunately met my end with, what's it called? When snow, an avalanche, you get what I'm saying. So because that can be the case, and then when I crossed it over, it wasn't affecting me anymore. But sometimes when you're releasing karma and stuff like that, it can relate more to ideas like you had an idea of letting go of something, or you keep being friends with the same type of people, and you're like, why does this keep happening? And there's often you can just release the karma by internally making the decision of realizing you don't want to be treated that anymore, or you're worth enough, and things like that. When people make those connections, they're releasing ideas that in a previous time period they were unable to release it. So with this, there does involve a lot of crying, but not crying as in like feeling sad. It's a feeling of like release, like feeling like, oh, I can breathe. Like, I didn't know this was sort of like bound up in me type of scenario. And I did double check because sometimes when we go this route, it is super uncomfortable, and they're not fun scenarios that force our hand to face things we are avoiding. And I said, can this be like fun? Can this be like an enjoyable, like, when you like hear someone's story and then you like cry and you relate to it, or you're like, that's so beautiful and it affects you, and that's like a nice experience. And basically I was told, like, yeah, it can be a totally positive experience. But the reason why this is so positive as a possible route is because we are not always fully aware of the blockages and limitations we have in our way that then prevent us from manifesting. And remember, manifesting isn't always just straight up like you're thinking about it, you're writing it down, you're putting the intention out there. We are at all times creating. So sometimes it's just the wish for a better scenario or job or relationship or whatever. And it's just thoughts we have throughout the day. Or we're trying to make something happen and we're reaching for our goals. And we're like, why is this just not happening? And little do we know there's some blockage in the way that was a preconceived notion we had in the past, in a past lifetime. It could be multiple factors. Keep in mind, it's not always past life related. But with that being in the way, these are things in your way that you're not aware of. And that's why it's really beautiful to be aware of them, release them and heal them, face your stuff, and then suddenly you're opening things up. So this is not only a sense of relaxation and like sense of like, oh wow, I'm so glad that's no longer on my head and shoulders, but you're actually opening yourself up for a lot more of positive things to come your way and to manifest a lot easier, because you won't have these like walls and blockages in your way. So then I asked my spirit guide, I was like, okay, well, again, I don't want to speak for you, but this feels like the quickest route to anxiety. And then I said, well, both of these sound good, but this seems almost more better is the best way I can explain it. Which one, like kind of asking the scenario of like, which one will give them, how did I phrase it? In so many words, I was like, what will give them like what they want? And what will they be like happier with? And my spirit guide said, in this route, it's more of a shorter experience. Like immediately you'll find satisfaction in the results and enjoy the benefits of everything that, as we talked about over here. But in this one, there is a longer term of positive effects. So maybe initially you're spending your time, just kind of facing some things and and releasing these thought processes you have of yourself and feeling better. And then in the long term, you have a greater result of manifesting, having things be opened up for you, life being easier, a lot of other things going on. So the choice ultimately is yours, but here are the factors popping up. And from there, you can just basically say internally, that's what I want. I would actually recommend taking a moment once you've decided like that's what I want, and really like meditate on it. Like put your hand to your heart, take a second to breathe, let all the silence fill in. You're really letting the universe know you're setting an intention, and then say to yourself, I choose this timeline. And then just sit in it for a little bit, for like, maybe 30 seconds. Let it go through your body, you could say. You could feel it like a vibration or an energy. And then just forget about it, move on with your life, and know that you've now stepped into that timeline and it's all coming together. But definitely set that intention. And remember this going forward, that's all you got to do. You can always request for the best timeline for yourself or reality. Often when you're aware of it and the process, it makes it easier to be conscious and choose things. And this is something to always consider. I would also be happy to do this as a repeated video idea. I'm always happy to do that. But above anything, please, I'm genuinely curious. What did you choose? What did you feel like you connected with, and why? I'm genuinely curious of people's opinions. As usual, please like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Helps out the channel like you would not believe. I am wishing you the best as well as the best timeline. I will see you in the next one, and let's get ready for group number 2. Group number 2, let's find out which is the best timeline for you by looking at the cards. So first we've got the Knight of Cups in reverse. We've got the 10 of Pentacles in reverse. And we have the 6 of Pentacles in reverse. And these are all being read as 3 separate timelines. Just give me one moment to consult my spirit guide for some extra details. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at them all individually and as a whole in order for you to, with the information provided, pick the best possible scenario for you to move forward in. And remember, these are the immediate timelines closest to you, so we're wielding with what is there. Oh, and I'm talking to my spirit guide right now, and I'll be with you in one moment. See, this is exactly why I'm very appreciative that you showed up for this reading, and thank you so much for being here, genuinely. First of all, I'm going to just be really honest with you. The energy in this reading is extremely heavy, and we're going to get kind of serious right now. It's really important that this type of stuff is discussed in order for you to feel as happy and in control of your life as possible. But I can feel that sometimes when we're going down that route trying to pick what's best for us, it can feel intense. It can feel like you're at odds with either yourself or individuals around you in order to make that route. But you'll notice that concept is very much repeating. And remember, these are the timelines closest to you. So this is what we have to work with, and we can choose in order for it to be a better scenario. So first we have the Knight of Cups in reverse. Now, specifically, this talks about this idea of you actively trying to make dreams and wishes happen. You're definitely, and I was double checking my spirit guide, and I was like, do you mean like affection at all? And they said, nope, just more like dreams and wishes type of scenario. And the unfortunate thing, the sad thing, to be honest with you, in this particular timeline is it just doesn't happen. Things aren't clicking, and there is a deep sense of confusion, like you're not quite sure what to do next, and as you're making decisions, it feels off, and then as things don't work out or feel in generally like they're missing you, like it's a timing thing, or it wasn't the right time, or it wasn't the right place type of scenario. It feels like there's a disconnection between you, your wishes, and the universe. And you're trying, and there's a sense of like sweetness behind your intentions. But over here, we have the shadow self being very predominant and almost, I don't want to say ignored, it's more unaware. And what I mean by that is, and I want to be clear when it comes to our shadow self, this is not like the bad part of ourselves. This is in each and every one of us, and it's just begging for us to face it and deal with it and understand the parts that aren't so quote unquote conventionally pretty. So this is our jealousy, our anger, our frustration, and it's there for a reason, and it's asking for us to face it and understand where it's coming from, and so on and so forth. And what I mean by it's not being ignored, it's not like you see it and go, I don't want to talk about it. It's more like you're very sweetly, and again, there's just such a sweet earnestness, that's the word, when you're going in this timeline to make something happen or wish for something to happen, and then there's these underlying thoughts that you're half listening to and believing, but you're almost not aware you're having them. And these underlying thoughts are the shadow self, the part of yourself that doesn't think you're good enough, or thinks, of course it didn't work out for you. Why would it? See, you're not good enough. These are not true. I want to be clear about what I'm saying. Man, the energy around this reading is so heavy and intense. But it's like you're both feeling disconnected from trying to make something happen, but as you also are going through the motions, these little thoughts are in the background bringing you down. But again, it's one of those scenarios where if you were to be asked straightforwardly, like, hey, are you feeling positive, or you feel like you're doing what you need to do? You'd be like, yeah. You're not even aware of how much you're judging yourself, is the best way I can put it. Now that's timeline 1 going on. And again, I don't want to speak for you, but that's not really the vibe. Then we have timeline number 2. It's pretty serious. I asked my spirit guide several times just to be absolutely clear I was hearing this properly. And in the Ten of Pentacles in reverse, it talks about this idea of you leaving family inheritance behind. And I said, what do you mean? Because, this is a large general reading. Like, do you mean like money in general? And they said, nope, family inheritance. And there was a close connection to this idea of feeling like generationally other people are sort of in control of your decision making, or there's a lot of influence of, well, if you want this, you got to do what I say type of scenario and whatever. And in this particular case, there's a sense of leaving it behind. In some cases, again, I want to be absolutely clear, I'm not advocating for this. I'm just talking about what's popping in the cards. In some cases, it feels, we'll just leave it at, there's a great separation between you taking on what they would like to have you think and believe and move and what happens next, and what you would like to do. And you creating a greater separation between that influence. And initially, my spirit guide said, there is the initial feeling of feeling like a little beat up in the process of moving on. Like, it's like you're pulling away from that influence, and in as you're pulling away from it and you're feeling that sensation, you're initially like, ooh, I feel a little worse for wear. That was intense. That made me feel a little emotional. That made me even maybe question my own viewpoint of myself. Maybe I even believe the words that they're throwing my way type of scenario. But it's short-lived. And then it's really beautiful. My spirit guide talked about how there's this great sense of you really finding your own identity, your own sense of belief system, your own sense of self, forging your own path. There's a lot of individuality, a lot of happiness in like finding that process. Like the process is really enjoyable and light to you. Ooh, I am getting strong, like, not goosebumps, but like happy shivers around me. And I feel it really strong around my legs, almost like this feeling of this sign, like once you sort of separate from that influence, you are just feel this great momentum in your life. Like you went from feeling stuck to really moving forward. And so again, it's got a really happy turnaround. It feels very difficult at first to make your thoughts and feelings be more important than theirs, and creating like a space for yourself to be more possible. But it ultimately is a scenario that you really deeply enjoy and have fun in. And it feels very, like permanent. Like once you choose yourself first is the best way I can describe it. It feels like you are at the top tier of your list of what you respect and choose and make decisions from the rest of your life. And nothing else can touch that. And that becomes your environment and your life and your unconsciousness. And there is a deep sense of happiness there, which is really beautiful. So it's like initially intense and a lot of decisions and choices, and feels a little rough to go through first, but just countless, endless, big, life-changing, positive experiences afterward, essentially. A lot of like self-connection, exploring that, and then, expressing it to the highest altitude. Then, in timeline number 3, we kind of come full back around to this. In the Six of Pentacles in reverse, this does talk about a lot of people very close to you. So this can be anything from friends and family, really just consciously sucking out everything they can from you. This can be anything from, I was about to say money, but my spirit guy went like, it's more like your energy, your like work, whatever you can do for them, like an activity for them. A lot of like time is really a big one I'm picking up. Yeah, my spirit guide's agreeing that time is the biggest. It's like, I just want you to physically be here, and you not being able to do something else slowly eats away at you. Just like the imagery we have going here, it's definitely a strong feeling. And I want to be clear about what I'm about to say next is not a reality or permanent, but it's almost like your light, like your inner light is leaking from you. And in the long term, there is a feeling like a shell of a person, because the more and more that they take from you, and they're very aware they're doing it and taking advantage of your good nature, because this card heavily talks about that subconscious, or the subtext, not subconscious, of that you are a good-natured person that would naturally give to people they care about, but then being aware of it and just getting whatever they can get from you and not concerned with how it leaves you last. I do want to be clear again that there is no actual possible way to lose your inner light. You might be less connected at different times of your life, but it's always there. It's always fully powered. You are always at the strongest you possibly can be. It's just a matter of like realizing you are. So if you're ever afraid it can be taken away from you, nope, not at all. Can't. You're good to go. But that doesn't take away from the feeling and sensations you have. So my spirit guide said that in these two scenarios, there's an avoidance of the problem. Like, obviously these don't feel like great timelines, but there's also like an issue there that is not being addressed. And then in this one, we talk about addressing an issue. And again, it feels really intense, but it's just so happy that the main thing you want to take away from this is that you realize that you need to choose you first. And whenever you're choosing or making any decision, there's a heavy sense of like, okay, well, my opinion's the most important, and I'm going to follow that. I'm going to follow what feels right. Well, I need you. That's great, but I need me. And so on and so forth, which is really beautiful. So again, please let me know what you choose in the comments below. I'm genuinely very curious. And let me know in general what you're like thinking and feeling, because this is a very intense reading, and like my heart really goes out to you, and more people can understand your circumstance than you may be fully aware of. Sometimes when you're in these positions, others will make you feel alone, but you're actually in a very common scenario, and many other people have also figured out how to find their individuality amongst what feels like a very overcrowded situation. And I think that's really beautiful for you. Above anything else, I want to make very clear, the way you're going to decide this is you're going to breathe, take a moment to yourself, let the universe sort of you're letting the universe know, like, hey, my intention's about to be set. You can put your hand to your heart and you're going to say, I choose timeline, and then you choose the timeline that you want. And just know that not only whatever you choose, you're going to do great in, but in the process, if you're ever like, I want it to be easier, I want as much help as possible, you can have that. You can both ask your spirit guides, you can ask whoever wants to help you in the spirit realm, that's like from the upper and lower world. You can totally ask just the universe in general to be like, hey, I would like this, but could you make it easier? Could you help me process it easier? Could you make it more comfortable, fun, whatever that may be? And you can make it to be the best possible scenario. Well, anyways, I love you guys to death. Please, what was I going to say? I'm wishing you the best. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. I'm wishing you the best timeline. And let's get ready for group number 3. Group number 3. Let's find out which is the best timeline for you by looking at the cards. Timeline number 1, we have the Ace of Swords in reverse. Timeline number 2, we have the 2 of Pentacles in reverse. And in the third one, we have the Knight of Swords in reverse. If you could just give me one moment, I'm going to consult my spirit guide for some extra details, and then we will get into this reading. See, this is really interesting. Okay, so the way we're going to go about doing this is I'm going to explain all of them separately, but then we are going to look at them as a whole so that you can, with all the information, choose the reading, or not the reading, choose the timeline that's best for you. So with that, this is based on whatever is the closest timeline pulled to you. We're looking at your options, and keep in mind this is not permanent. This is just one timeline you're hopping on, and then as you continue to make decisions, you'll wield and continue to move and finesse what you've chosen into another one, and so on and so forth. That's how you've been living your life up to now. But I do see, because these are the 3 closest, possibility timelines for you popping up, we have almost a theme going on, and it's definitely a theme that in 2 of the readings, you'll notice a similarity. And with the third, you're going to see how one concept influences another. It's important for us to understand how one concept influences another because it helps us reevaluate the way we interact with anything. We understand where it comes from and where it can go. What one thing is happening, but it's really implying another. Your consciousness expressing one thing, your subconscious, it's coming from a subconscious place over here, so on and so forth. So first, with that being said, let's start with the Ace of Swords in reverse. Now this, in this first timeline, talks about this idea of just an absolute inability to get started with expressing yourself. There is a lot of self-consciousness of, well, is that the right thing to express or think, or maybe I'm in the wrong? There is just a lot of not sure how to get out the words. And unfortunately, there is a sense of being unable to even step into working out or exercising a new mindset in order to explore it and see where that takes you, because the beginning stages to get there, you're questioning and pulling yourself back constantly. And so it never feels like you're getting out of the running start, and therefore you feel almost paralyzed by all of this. So it's a very deeply uncomfortable feeling, but also it's just really unhelpful to you. You want to move forward with new ideas, and you would love to be able to share what's on your mind, whatever that may be, an idea, maybe your frustration, maybe your happiness, what you think is a good option, so on and so forth. But it's there's just a deep sense of oh, not that. Oh, well, what? Oh, I don't know what I'm thinking and saying, and so on and so forth type of scenario. So in the second timeline, though, we've got a totally different vibe going on. In the Two of Pentacles in reverse,
I thought this was interesting. I was talking about it deeper with my spirit guide because I always like to understand why this card, not this card type of scenario. A big thing we want to look at is the imagery here. So in the background, we have this pyramid, and we're going to think of it as only one can enter. And then over here, we have two little aliens, one on each side, and think of them as representing this sort of balancing act you play within yourself. And normally this would represent anything from the ideas like good and bad, maybe I should do this and that. Sometimes in order to accomplish a goal, there is a certain level of multitasking and you're depending on a couple things. Maybe when it comes to your own income, you have a couple different factors going on. But whatever it is, it's the sense of you dancing back and forth between this balancing act in order to make decisions, go forward, depend on things, so on and so forth. But in this timeline, there is a very clear severance of it, and you finally having to choose one thing. But again, we're not viewing it as abandoning all the other ideas permanently type of scenario. It's more that you were not aware of how much, when you were depending on this balancing act, you were in fact avoiding being more direct. So you figure out how to be more direct. You pick a side, if you will. And again, remember, we don't want to think of this side as one, good, this business career, these opinions, and then on this other side, bad, these other business decisions. You try to keep it more as an idea of directness rather than choosing between these two sides. So again, maybe you do fluctuate. There is a sense of balance, but instead of balancing them at the same time, you're being very clear, like, I'm choosing this, now I'm moving forward. Now I'm choosing this, and I'm moving forward. These two balancing acts almost feel like they're integrated, if you will, and you're choosing one thing at a time. Now, going forward into this proverbial pyramid, so to speak, or this state of manifestation, you're putting yourself in this great place where as you move forward, the world interacts with you in a more direct way. It's very much a reflection type of scenario, which is really cool. So because you're more certain and specific about what you want and feel and think and believe and express it easily and wield it in such a way, the universe is very direct with letting you know, like, yeah, that's a great idea. Yep, here's all your wishes come true. Oh, maybe that's not a good choice. Oh, maybe this is not the route. Yep, you're back on the right path again. And you're just really quickly getting answers because you're very direct with your choices. So again, it goes from feeling maybe, my spirit guide didn't talk about uncomfortability, but I imagine there's a certain level of it being new to being direct and choosing, like thinking in a new way, but it's realizing that was once made you feel well-rounded as a person was actually an excuse from being completely direct. You stepping into that directness and then just deeply benefiting from it, which I think is really interesting. And this just and this is just like a side note, the world and how we all interact with one another is so complex. One thing for one person is the right choice, and one thing that is good for one person is not the greatest option and way of thinking for another. And the cool, beautiful thing is we all need things at different times, so even those things are not set in stone and could be switched between two individuals. So often people talk about this idea of balance and stuff like that, but we never think about maybe sometimes it's time to be a little more straightforward and singular noted. So I think that's really cool that popped up in the reading. And again, this is not like a permanent thing. This is just what's needed right now for you. And we talk about the beautiful end results of that. Now in the third timeline, we have the Knight of Swords in reverse, and you're going to notice there's a similarity over here. But over here, you couldn't quite get started. You couldn't quite get your thoughts off your chest. You couldn't quite express it or shape a full mindset to then wield and go deeper in and build off of. In this one, think of it as putting, my spirit guide said, it's a lot of putting your foot in your mouth. So there's a lot of expression going on, and there's almost a frustrated chaosness behind it is the best way I can explain it. There's this feeling of you want to get it off your chest, and if you don't, you'll feel like you're sort of lying to yourself or not fully expressing it, which is totally understandable, and I'm not saying that's, you should totally express yourself. But because of this mindset, that particular timeline, energies, many things going on, it just ends up you saying things that you later regret and wish you had maybe taken a second to hear all of the information or understand, or maybe, yes, you needed to express it, but you wanted to more express it to yourself or a close friend before you expressed it to everyone else, and then could think it out in a different kind of way. Again, I want to be clear, we are not, this is just timeline thing. This is not an overall attitude towards general expression or these ideas as a whole. This is just what's happening. So it's really interesting here because, like we said, when we look at the entirety, these both talk about this idea of too little or too much expression. And in these particular cases and scenarios for you, again, not for everybody and not for you forever, just these timeline scenarios, we can see how in both situations there's the desire to get it out, but in both cases and scenarios, it doesn't feel like you have behind it the weight of everything else. It's like expression's the main focal point, but you kind of need a little help with what you can depend on informationally, emotional stuff, other factors going on. And so there's this desperation to express in some kind of way, but feeling like because you don't have those other factors, there's a bit of confusion for yourself and feeling like you're not loving the results of that. But then over here, we have that sort of foundation or meat, if you will, in the Two of Pentacles in reverse. We see somebody who is both expressing themselves, but they're wielding a bunch of information. But we also get to understand that if you are constantly balancing things and hopping between all of those different perspectives, as much as it's a wonderful, well-rounded side of yourself, it can lead to somebody overthinking things or not thinking things through and kind of acting on what is the most visceral reaction they have type of scenario. And then we see that you can take that foundation and the intention of expression and wield it in a different kind of way. It's like we go out of the realm of comparison at all, and we're taking a third option that might not be considered, which is just singular thought. In these type of scenarios, it's not that there wasn't singular thought, but it's like too much, too little, what about this? And it's like we're looking at the bigger picture of things. So I love this for you because, again, the choice is yours, obviously. I'm giving you all the possibilities, but it does seem like timeline number 2 is the best for you. You really feel like you get to be heard, you figure yourself out, you're taking one step at a time and exploring a new mindset. You get a lot of positive results back, and there's this beautiful new experience you have where instead of it just purely being expression, you get this reflection of what does that mean after you express it. The universe says, here you go, here's a manifestation you wanted. Oh, here you go, I'm letting you know that this isn't the path you would like to go on, and so on and so forth. So I love this for you because this, again, I do want you to keep this in mind going forward in the future, that when you find yourself in a route where you're like, do I do this or that? There can potentially be a third option you haven't even considered. What is the foundation under the main thing you're concerned about or looking into? Maybe that in itself is an inkling or a breadcrumb of the answer you're really looking for. Now, with all that being said, in order to make this timeline possible for yourself, you really want to just decide and put it out there. So how do you do that? You can just really simply take a moment to breathe after this timeline, or this reading I'm saying. And you're going to just breathe. Take a second to connect. And you're going to let silence fill your room and your own internal self. You put your hand on your heart. And you just take a second to say, I choose timeline number, and then you choose your timeline. And then after you choose your timeline, just give yourself some silence again. So it's sort of like soaking it up. It's running all through you. You're really sending it out to the universe. And then you can just move on with your day and know that everything is working out and you're stepping into that timeline now. You don't need to do anything else. Love it how simple it is. And remember, this is something you can continue to wield and navigate and curate as you go forward. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. It helps out the channel like you would not believe. I'm wishing you the best as well as the best timeline. I will see you in the next one. And let's get ready for our final group. Group number 4. Group number 4. Let's find out which is your best timeline by looking at the cards. We've got timeline number 1, which is the 8 of Pentacles upright. Timeline number 2, we've got the Devil card in reversed. And then the third is we have the 2 of Cups in reverse. Give me just one moment. I'm going to consult my spirit guide for some extra details. But also what we're going to do is we're going to look at each one individually and then all of them as a whole, so that with the information we provide, you are then able to make the best decision possible for yourself. So just give me one moment to do that. Okay, this is, what's so funny? I was going to say, this is interesting, and it is, but in particular, this one, even my spirit guide, which is, I don't think I've heard them say this before, they pointed to the card and they went, "This is interesting," which is really cool and fun. Fun fact, actually, if you're interested when I say pointed to, I go to the spirit realm to talk to them, and there's like a table, and I can like see the cards there, and my spirit guide's like pointing to the cards like in the spirit realm. So just fun, interesting, if you're interested in that. But anyway, so let's start off with the Eight of Pentacles upright. So in this particular scenario, it shows you making decisions that are, first of all, out of fear. It's this feeling of like, I don't know what to do next. What can I depend on? And it's like, okay, well, I feel that I can rely on and depend on and find comfort in what is everybody else doing. Because if I know what everybody else is doing, that in itself feels comforting. So again, the choices being made out of fear, and the decisions being made are to be in alignment with what everybody else is doing. Keep in mind, it's not necessarily creating togetherness or harmony or closeness with other people. You're just sort of going, this is how my spirit guide put it. They said they're going along with what everybody else is choosing. Now, if you notice, everybody looks alike in this picture. Everyone's doing the same thing, but they are all headed to this room in the background. Now, the funny thing is, dark voids are not necessarily a bad thing, whether this be in meditation or experiences you can have in the spirit realm or in general. Sometimes not knowing what's going to happen next is a wonderful thing. And sometimes in the silence, we can find so much understanding. So keep that in mind when it comes to voids. They're not bad things. But in this particular case and scenario, my spirit guide said that you, the person watching this, would not know what's going to happen next as they follow. It's like you're following and not sure where it's leading, and that when you do get there, you would not love the end results. It's not good. So that's just something to keep in mind with that. We don't really have a lot of substance in this timeline because you're only making choices out of just trying to find some type of footing. And unfortunately, that footing is leading you in a path you don't really want. And you're not really sure about what it is until it's sort of too late is the best case scenario. So anyways, that's timeline number one. Then over here in number two, we have something a little more enticing. So my spirit guide specifically said that it would be about releasing yourself from toxic influences, which I love. So this can be a variety of things, both literally like material, like physical type of items, but sometimes it's like people around you and their mindsets, or maybe the environment and community that you find yourself in, or whatever may have you. So whatever is having and shaping the way you think and feel and energetically pick up, you're releasing yourself of that, which is really beautiful. And I thought this was really interesting. My spirit guide specifically said that once you are free of it, you would feel really clean and refreshed. The best way I can explain this sensation, it's like you weren't aware of how it was affecting you. Sometimes when people are no longer hanging out with people that, bring them down, they just feel lighter. There's a sense of like, oh, I feel just so much more, myself. I feel a little happier type of thing. But sometimes in this particular case and scenario, you weren't aware of how much it was sort of entrenching you in kind of every aspect. And because it was, and it was kind of infecting every little part of your life in a way you weren't aware of, it's more than lightness. It's like Have you ever had like a dirty living space and then you really deeply cleaned it and suddenly it feels like you can breathe easier, you can think easier when you go to do a simple task like, I don't know, you want to do something fun, some sort of self-care treatment for yourself at home, or you're just watching a movie. It feels a little more exciting. It feels a little more inspiring. And you feel like you suddenly feel motivated to do something else because of this scenario type of thing. So again, it's just not only the sense of happiness, but the after effect is really rewarding. And with that positive after effect, it has the subtext of leading to the motivation and the excitement to do more and kind of head out on your own path with all of that removed. So wonderful just feelings and going forward pathway. Then in the third, and this is where it gets really interesting. So in the Two of Cups in reverse, my spirit guide says it specifically talks about the idea of you separating yourself from the mindset that when you do something, you're hoping to get an equal exchange of time, energy, even affection, whatever that may be. Now, initially that sounds like you wouldn't want to go down that route because in many cases and scenario, both from people's like personal beliefs, but also what I personally find in the tarot cards, like the Two of Cups upright is like, in my opinion, the underrated card you would want to get for a relationship type of scenario. Keep in mind, we're not solely focused on this. We're keeping a timeline scenario that talks about many different subjects in this, but what I'm trying to express here is normally you're hoping that when you put your time, energy, and effort into something, you would get that back. That not as in a justice card type of flavor where there's an expectation behind it. It's more just like you're happy to do it and you're so happy somebody is appreciating and showering that back on you. Again, we're talking about more than just relationships. This could be from work to financial to just the way you're exchanging your effort towards your friends or the environment around you, whatever that may be. So initially a separation from that seems kind of almost, maybe you're in like a bad headspace. Now, we're not implying that. I'm just saying that doesn't feel initially great. And honestly, it doesn't feel fun to move away from that belief system because you're like, wait a minute, I'm just going to put all this effort in and I might not get it back. And my spirit guide even said initially it will feel frustrating to walk away from that mindset and know that when you put this energy and effort forward, because you're removing that expectation, because you're no longer thinking that way, it can feel, the residue is kind of frustration when you don't get it back. Because you're not putting that expectation out there to the universe, and therefore you're not getting it sometimes. And sometimes there's even almost a factor where you're, I don't want to say lonely, but it's like the temptation to look back on that old belief system and wish you were back in that thought process and functioning that way with the world around you. But here's where it gets, and this is where the interesting part comes in, what initially feels like negative and again, I'm not saying you'll feel negative, it's more just like initially appears one way from an outside perspective. What ends up happening is you actually end up getting, and this is how my spirit guide put it, options you didn't know were options, like good things that you'll be really excited about, but they wouldn't have come into your field of vision because you were approaching the world in one particular mindset. And so you weren't aware other options that would have made you really happy, you would have loved, explored, all this good stuff that you really would like. They just were outside of those factors. It's like being like, yes, A or B. It's like banana or apple. And you're like, but what if I want barbecue chips? And you're like, oh. And it's like, well, that's not in our fruit section over here. I didn't even have that as a possibility. You get what I'm saying here? So when you pull away from that mindset, in this particular case and scenario, you end up welcoming all these other things you didn't know you were unintentionally sort of pushing out or not allowing into your sphere. So really interesting, and that's why I agreed with my spirit guide when they described it that way. Now again, the choice is yours, what you would like to have, but I don't know how great this one sounds from beginning to end. Both of these are fantastic options. I did ask additional questions if one was like kind of better for you or not, and my spirit guide basically was like, they're both fine. Like it's whatever seems more appealing to you and you're connecting more with in this moment. So when it comes to your decision making, all you have to do is you want to really clearly set that intention out there. So you're going to go quiet. You're going to let the silence of the universe set in. You're going to put your hand to your heart if you feel like it. And you're going to just say to yourself with clear intention, I choose to step into timeline number, pick the number of the timeline, and then let there be silence again. Let that feeling and intention sort of pass through you and go out into the universe, and then just move on. And you just live your life. Know that you have now stepped into that timeline and things will play out to continue to move you forward in it. And that's it. It's as simple as that. And just remember this technique going forward, because remember, we're talking about the closest timeline to you. You will continue to wield and bend and curate whatever those timelines look like as time progresses continuously. That's how you've functioned up to this point, and now you're conscious of it and continue to function forward with it. I do also genuinely want to know in the comments below, what did you choose and why? And don't forget, what you've chose genuinely affects and positively influences others, because when we can understand people's different perspectives, we can consider evaluating our own, and it can really benefit each other. So it's both out of curiosity that I'm asking, but also we're all basically teaching each other, which is really beautiful. So I love you all to pieces. I'll see you in the next one. I'm wishing you the best. I'm also wishing you the best timeline. Goodbye.